Hi, Jim Paterson from Discover Group. We're here today with Michael Gray, a globally esteemed analyst and a partner at Agentis Capital. We've just finished off a great series of speeches and presentations from groups that are operating in the critical metals space. Mike was the MC, he's a keynote speaker. He led us off and kind of set the stage to help the audience understand why these companies were relevant.
Yep.
And maybe just sort of talk to us about why you know, we all have 24 hours in our day.
Yeah.
Why are you so focused on the critical metals space? Obviously, you know the mining space very well, and this is where you've chosen to allocate your time, resources, and your reputation.
Yeah, no, it's thanks for the introduction and kind words, Jim. It's really this confluence of factors that have driven critical minerals to be really important. It's the green economy, it's security of supply, and it's the shortage of these particular minerals that are going to get us through the energy transition. So that's kind of got us looking at it as an investment thesis as a whole, and covering what we would consider best of breed assets and companies within that. So it was an opportunity to provide that macro overview from our point of view.
A lot of people don't understand how challenging it is to make a mineral discovery. So people that are in Brussels, for example, say, well, we'll just go out and spend money on exploration and we'll find more copper deposits.
Yeah.
They don't really have the track record that we do of all the heartbreak and going through the challenges of actually making these discoveries. So what would be some of the kind of supply, demand, balances or imbalances that provide opportunities to investors to invest in exploration companies?
Yeah, the easy ones are really the copper related projects where there's a clear need to electrify the planet. 80% of the world, in terms of leadership of governments, have embraced the need for vis-a-vis climate change.
Yeah.
And it is probably the most important element out there to critical mineral to find and not necessarily secure supply for North America, but for the execution on global electrification. So that's at the top of the list.
I'll stop you there.
Yeah.
So paint a picture for our massive viewing audience here. Yeah. Walk us through the components of where copper sits from car to power line to home.
Well, in terms of the copper intensity.
Yeah.
It's really the power infrastructure that's delivering it to our homes.
Yeah.
This is the biggest use of copper. But what's changing is the copper input into the electric vehicle being 3 to 5 times that of the conventional internal combustion engine, and so you're seeing that. With growth in electric vehicles globally, the projections are that we're going to need much more capacity in terms of mine production. I think in the presentation earlier today, by 2040, about 8 million tons more of copper, involving a number of large mines to come on stream. So that's the easy one, I think, for investors to understand, and it's very conventional to invest in.
Yeah.
Some of the other minerals that have different markets and different dynamics and price swings that are a little bit tougher to gauge in terms of as an investor and new to their experience.
Yeah, and just because people don't understand it doesn't mean that there isn't a great opportunity. So
absolutely. So
why do you like defense? You've been a massive backer of defense in the Wichita project. What stands out there for that project?
Yeah, I'd say number one, the infrastructure is fantastic. For rare earth element projects, they're going to need power. If they can have hydropower, fantastic, to minimize the cost. If they have road access, which Defense has, Wichita. And then the other thing we really like amongst the North American rare earth element plays, and they're at PEA stage, is that the mineralogy is very conducive to developing a superior concentrate. So it's one thing to have grade, which they do have. It's another thing to be able to concentrate it multiple times, up to about 40-45%. So in our view, it is one of the best, if not the best, development project in North America.
And then because of jurisdictional risk, for a Western buyer or Western investors, it may, if you're saying it's one of the best in North America, that puts it at one of the top slots globally as well. If you if you eliminate the jurisdictional risk that is inherent in certain places in Asia and Russia, let's say, or other places in the world, or am I off with that statement?
No, I think with the push, especially with the U.S. to secure supply of rare earths in North America and create processing capacity in the U.S., that it has become very strategic. It will be 8 to 10% of the world's supply if Wichita is in production for defense. That is incredibly important and very accessible, I think, to the markets in North America. It's a very simple project. It's open pit. It's not complicated, as I mentioned, on the metallurgical front. So when we filter all the assets, and there have been disappointments in the past, maybe 10 years ago, investors were buying a basket of rare earths and then getting disappointed. We've kind of filtered them down to what we think is the best, and we may cover other opportunities. But for those reasons, infrastructure, grade, metallurgy, that's why we have framed it as the best in Canada, if not North America.
And what do you think about sort of those that are a little off the beaten path, some like tungsten well, I guess tungsten would be a good one to talk about. How does that fit into the picture?
Well, it's very important from our understanding to the Department of Defense in the U.S. for military applications. And I think there is a need for North American supply, consistent supply. 85% of the market is controlled by the Chinese, and that's really discouraged North American investors from investing in tungsten.
Yeah.
Because of the price swings and no confidence you can actually build a project with the right price. So if government infrastructure incentives and project incentives are there are some projects like Fireweed's Mactung that's world class in terms of grades. It's got some infrastructure challenges to overcome. So if there is that desire to secure supply, it is one of those projects that will be right at the top of the list in our view.
Yeah, and luckily that particular project is right beside a massive zinc deposit. These are just elephants that are adjoining each other, and I would assume that in the future there'd be massive development synergies.
Yeah, the key is really to unlocking the Yukon, and we're talking about the Yukon here, is to bring hydropower into the Yukon in some form or fashion. And that's either the easiest one, in some respects, would be to bring it up from BC, the Northwest Transmission Line, into Whitehorse, and then come across to North Canal Road, into Fireweed, and other projects, Mactung, Mac Pass, and then also up into other regions of the Yukon that need hydroelectric power. Yeah. The other option is to electrify the Yukon with a dam, a big dam in the Yukon, or piecemeal with other projects. But right now, our view, and we've publicly talked about this in a number of forums, is that BC, their grid being connected to the Yukon could be a game changer. And it's already attracted a number of senior mining companies, strategic investments, and in some cases, buying assets that are maybe anticipating electrification. Right.
And what I love about Fireweed's project is it feels like with the massive scale of it, it could weather many cycles, or at least one or two troughs and peaks in that mining or pricing cycle, if it does eventually get into production, which I would think would be important to a major mining company.
Yeah, it's a project that I'm going to be up visiting in about 10 days, so I'm very excited about that, to see it on the ground, understand it. I've got a pretty good base metal background through my previous experience with senior mining companies. But yeah, that's what seniors want, is those mine lives of
30 years.
Plus 25 to 30 years, and maybe beyond 75, where you can participate in the commodity swings, as you say, multiple times. Don Lindsay of Teck has been very open when he was CEO, talking about it's those years when the prices spike up and you're in production where you can make a tremendous amount of profit and survive to the next cycle.
Exactly. Yeah. What about tin? Talk to us about how tin fits into the picture.
It's a good question, because tin has been ignored, I think, on some levels by analysts in the capital markets community, because small market and it can be very volatile. So it's tough to put together a forward curve or deflated forward curve price, and so it's tough to analyze in terms of the tin price in your valuation. So I think that's changing on some level. I think it's going to be best of breed projects that are the winners, and so we will look at some tin projects for sure. But every time you pick a new commodity, you're needing to develop some really good intelligence on the commodity space, the deposit space, and so there's a bit of a commitment to get into that. I've covered lithium before and potash and now rare earths, so you're quite careful getting to new markets and new commodities.
Right. I don't want to miss anything here. Okay. If you look around at these electrification or electric metals, I mean, how would you describe nickel and how it fits in the picture?
Yeah, nickel's really core right now to the batteries in terms of efficiency and energy density. And so the senior diversified mining companies have made that, if not number one, number two, or number three in terms of pecking order of greenfield projects they want to be involved with if the potential is there. It was a good presentation made earlier by Alex, who illuminated their greenfields approach, looking for high-grade, high-margin nickel projects in, I think, initially North America, maybe expanding that elsewhere. But I have a nickel background in Falconbridge, and my experience is these are fantastic prizes. You can find a good nickel sulfide deposit, you're going to be able to sell it for much more than you could at the same stage for, say, a copper project.
Yeah.
They're tougher to find. That's the bottom line. So I think the search in North America for high margin nickel deposits that maybe aren't as conventional, and I think Prospector is working on some of those, and I'm aware of some other ones. I'm very interested. Should anyone make a hit on the nickel space in North America, that's one I will gravitate immediately, partly my experience and partly knowledge of how important it is long term to the investor, the downstream investors, the diversified mining company and the battery companies in particular.
Yeah, it's been over 15 years, but we had a nickel sulfide company in our group. You might remember it, called Brilliant Mining.
Brilliant Mining, yes.
Way back in the day. And it was relatively unknown, but when that nickel price moves, there's a scarcity of high quality assets, and the investment community can move in quickly and buy the entire space. So these prices move fast.
It's a great point. There's a real gap there, and there's not a lot of talent in the nickel space. You really need nickel sulfide explorationists that know what they're doing, and fortunate that Rob Carpenter and his colleague
and Robert Brzezowski
have that with that Western mining experience. And so acutely aware. I mean, I've covered a few nickel companies, but they've got to be very special situations, and you really have to leverage a discovery drill hole to be on top of them. But there's all sorts of potential in North America. Eagle's Nest was a surprise. The Eagle Mine, those were not conventional thinking amongst the senior mining companies, I don't believe. And then you see the transactions that have occurred in terms of Wyloo buying Noront, for example. Right.
So I would imagine you do Agentis does advisory, but where can institutional investors find you if they like to pick your brain on the opportunities in the space?
Yeah, we do have an institutional research product that institutions are welcome to get from us, and we don't charge for it. We have independent research, and it paves the way for our business to identify exceptional opportunities in our view, and provide a coverage list very similar to what I was doing at Macquarie for 9 years, and global in focus, but currently much more BC and the Yukon, as it turns out.
Right.
And so, the institutional investors have access to our research largely, in large measure, but they can always email me and others interested, michael.gray@agentis.com.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, you raise a good point. So there was Tin One that has projects in Tasmania. But other than that, all the projects here today were in Canada that we're focused on, right? I mean, I'm just looking through.
Yeah, no, I think coming back to that overlay of government strategies.
Yeah.
And I would argue Canada has been more or less on the front foot to drive federal initiatives related to infrastructure projects and permitting, and there is I think we are heading in the right direction, as long as they allocate the funds to the good projects, right?
Yeah.
That they filter the projects, and so I think although we only cover one of the five, I think this particular critical minerals day in focus has been good I noticed there were some government reps in attendance.
Oh, really? I didn't notice them.
Yeah,
Great.
very good. To get it on the radar screen, and some jurisdictions are actually still crafting their strategy in terms of BC. So they can maybe take advantage of what's been created so far by the federal government, other jurisdictions. And BC has lots of opportunity, as you know.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, thank you very much for an amazing presentation and keynote speech at the Critical Metals Day. We really appreciate your attendance, all the knowledge you have, your industry insight, and I think everyone who attended today is going to walk away knowing a little bit more, but being a lot more interested. So we thank you for that.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
All right,
Really
thank you.
appreciate it. Cheers.